Thanks for coming to episode 3 of our healthcare IT series. My name is Tom Walsh. I'm here with Ice Miller, a partner here, and I want to welcome you to our conference room, welcome to our facility. A couple of logistics. The ladies' room is down past the receptionist desk to the right. The men's room is through the elevator lobby around the corner. With that out of the way, I want to thank our friends with HC1.com, Research Institute, and TechPoint for helping us put this together. I'm going to get out of here quickly and let's get on to the main event. I want to introduce Lauren Peterson from TechPoint, who has a few words to say about an upcoming event that we should all be familiar with.
So I wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of our 17th annual Mira Awards. It is Saturday, April 23rd. It's our 17th year that we'll be hosting the event. Honoring the best of tech in Indiana, we have 14 awards up for grabs, 1,000 people descending downtown, and Ice Miller has graciously offered 2 seats at their table. So if you would, look under the table that you're sitting at, and we are actually giving away 2 free tickets to a lucky attendee this morning to thank you for your participation. We have a winner. All right. Thank you. My card and information is in there, but we're excited that you can join us, Jim. And thank you, Ice Miller, for offering 2 tickets to Jim and his guest. All right, Barbara, you want to go ahead and turn it over to See me afterwards. I'll get you in. I'll turn it over to Brad Boston.
All right, so I'm the
Chairman
third
and CEO.
introduction, so we're having multiple introductions tonight. So thanks for everybody joining us here. I just wanted to introduce Parveen Chand, who's the Chief Operating Officer of Eskenazi Health. I've had an opportunity to work with Parveen for the past several years, and he's one of those people who has a combination of both a healthcare background, but also he's a very progressive, very entrepreneurial type person. And he's doing a lot of very innovative things at Eskenazi. And as you think about the reason we put together these workshops, it's really to bring people together who normally would be too busy and too time-starved to actually spend the energy to meet other people and open up different ways to collaborate and see how within the state of Indiana we have this opportunity to really lead in digital health. And I think you'll hear from Parveen some examples of what they're doing and some of the experiences he has. It really shows a good pathway forward. So building on what we've already talked about in the first 2 events, he'll get more into how do you really personalize the healthcare experience, how do you make it so it's all about the individual, and give a lot of really good content and data to support that. So I'll welcome Parveen. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Brad. Good morning, all. Thanks, Ice Miller, for hosting. The first 2 workshops I was unable to attend, but from what I gathered in the context, it was all around where we in Indiana have an opportunity to lead, where we currently are in terms of health status. The second one was more about wellness and wearables. As a backdrop, before I get started, I really wanted to illustrate a couple of things. One is over my career, I've had a chance to spend time in St. Louis, outside of Chicago, Omaha, and here in Indiana, and Indianapolis. And I can tell you unequivocally that I find this environment to be probably the most progressive when it comes to working with technology companies. I find this environment to be the most endearing in terms of new ideas, exploration, and I think we have the resources here to really make a huge difference. So first and foremost, I want to applaud all of you for actually fostering such an environment. Before I get started, I wanted to just put this up here. In terms of, I'm not going to talk about politics, all right? I'm not going to talk about the Supreme Court nominations or lack of, and I'll try not to offend anybody in terms of the next 20 or 30 minutes. But me worry. Do I worry? There are a couple things that have me worried. In terms of where we are with healthcare, in terms of where we are with the spend, and I'm going to build a case in terms of the imperative, in terms of why we have to step up and step up our game. Okay. Here's some food for thought. What do the following companies that you see on the screen actually have in common? If you look at Uber, the world's largest taxi company, they own no taxis. You look at Netflix, the largest movie house owns no real estate. You look at Airbnb. How many of you have used Airbnb? What about Uber? Netflix? What do all these companies have in common? They've leveraged technology. Over the last 5-10 years, they've really leveraged technology in terms of making a difference. And if you really think through and ask yourself the question of why are these companies successful, it's really coming down to two things, in my opinion. The first is a personalized experience. When you think about your experience with Airbnb, your experience with Uber, your experience with Netflix, it's a personalized experience. Two is a competitive cost advantage. 99 cents, or sometimes I get those coupons in the email for a free Netflix video. And at best, on a Friday night, it's about $1.69, right? It's the price advantage.
But do you have time to watch it?
Yes and no. And then the last piece is, you know, what do all of these companies leave you as a consumer feeling? Well, A, valued, and B, you've got a quality experience. So if you really think about this in terms of innovation, if you ask yourself again the three questions, or the two questions in terms of what are they doing, leveraging technology, and two, from a consumer standpoint, it's personalized experience, cost advantage, and they leave you feeling like you've got something of value. True? So why and how? I'm going to go through the imperative for us in terms of the national challenge. Don't forget the outcomes. That was the first workshop in terms of outcomes. But I want to go through what is the national challenge, bring it back down to Indiana, and ask us all to think about where we need to lead. Understanding the consumer, I'm going to walk us through the continuum, the care continuum, which I don't think everyone has a full understanding of what that really is, the role of technology, and then do a quick wrap up. All right, so here is the triple aim, and I think everyone has seen the triple aim before, but my challenge out to you is the triple aim an IT advantage? Is the triple aim something that we can leverage? If you think through better care, lower costs, and better population health, let's just walk through each one, and where can IT and technology really play a role? Better care through automation. Better care through reaching multi-generation customers. Better care in terms of patient access. Better care in terms of focusing on preventative medicine. You think through lower costs through payer reform. An example that I will go through in just a little bit in terms of healthcare insurance and the healthcare insurance technology that's going through this right now. I'll come back to that in just a few moments. Lower costs in terms of transparency, lower costs in terms of new models of delivery. And one that I think we as a community really tend to gravitate around is better population health. Is there an advantage of data analytics? And I know my colleagues over at Regan Street have a long history of data analytics, and there's a whole compendium of 30, 40 years of history in terms of what we can leverage and learn from folks like Regan Street. Better population health through social media, better population health through education. I'm going to look at education just a little bit as well. And then better population health through healthy living incentives. As a precursor, again, rising costs. National health expenditures are now at $9,500 per person. The fastest growth has been at the Medicaid level. Medicaid spending grew at 11% to $495 billion. Private health insurance, however, has the largest sector at almost $1 billion. However, had the lowest growth. But it counts for 33% of the total national health expenditure. That's one of the imperatives. Rising costs through either regulations, the ACA, medical devices, all leading to health spending that is projected to grow between 2014 and 2024 by almost 6% a year. So how do we leverage that? Health spending is projected to grow 1.1% faster than GDP One of the things I will notice or mention is that we put out a question prior to the workshop, and the question was, how many of you think, well, is the 17.1% that we spend on healthcare a good thing or a bad thing in terms of GDP? And the answers were, we're spending too much. But I want to challenge that a little bit. I want to challenge that thinking in terms of, is the growth of our GDP the real thing that we're trying to grow? It's our consumer economy and how we consume. That's what we're really trying to grow. So how about focusing our energy in terms of growing the GDP? There's still outcomes that we have to measure, but I want to focus it a little bit about the GDP itself. So over the course of the next 7 years through 2024, GDP is expected to rise from 17.4 to 19.6%. Rising cost of care, and you can read this for yourself, but 67% total premium per family increase over a period of 9 years. 86% increase in terms of employer premium contributions, and a per person deductible increase of almost 125%. Focusing on this slide just a little bit, you can see that the axis here in terms of the cumulative percentage of total spend, and then the axis of basically is basically a percentage. If you look at the 50 percentile, 50%, the bottom 50% of spenders account for only 3% of spending. The bottom 50% of spenders only account for 3% of spending. Conversely, the top 1% of spenders account for more than 1/5 of all spending in the nation. So really, how do we leverage technology to impact both spectrums? The focal point, however, that I want to focus in on is the top 5% of spenders account for almost half of all spending. And in Indiana, I think the metrics are out there that we spend more and we're getting less. Again, on rising cost of care, 5% of the U.S. population accounts for nearly half of total spending in healthcare. And what I really want to focus in on next is what else? What else is out there that's got me a little bit worried in terms of where we're headed with elections, what's coming down the pipeline with bundle payments, in terms of the bundles with joint care, that's already a given, that comes in April. We're already thinking through what cardiac bundles look like. We're also looking at end-stage renal disease in terms of what's coming down the pipeline in the next couple of years. Interoperability is a challenge. How do we, in terms of healthcare IT, really leverage the need to integrate and be interoperable across different platforms? All of this, in my opinion, leads to opportunity. And I think this is where we're really poised to lead the nation. Outcomes. You can't read the left-hand side, but I do want to point out the well-being index. How many of you have heard of this well-being index? Quite a few of you. This has been going on for about 10, 15 years now. This is a Gallup Health Wage well-being index. This is a review of interviews of 177,000 people across all of 2015. And the metrics for Indiana are right there. Out of the 50 states, where do you rank in terms of purpose? So liking what you do each day. We don't rank all that well. Social ranking in terms of, do you have the supporting relationships in your community? We rank 46. Financial. Do you actually have the ability to manage your economic outcomes in economic life? We rank 30th. In terms of community, like where you live and feel safe, we rank 42nd. Physical. Do you actually have the stamina and do you have good health and energy to go about your daily life? We rank at 45. That, I think, is a telling sign in terms of where we as a state have room for improvement. Again, this is just one metric. This is not on the health metrics like obesity or smoking, but this is just the well-being index itself. More information is available at Gallup Healthways. So what do consumers really want? In my opinion, this is what consumers are looking for. Consumers are looking for us to simplify healthcare by creating solutions that combine health, wellness, and nutrition, connecting with people on an emotional and personal level. I think this is what consumers are telling us. This is what our consumers at Eskenazi Health are telling us. They want us to simplify. And I've got a slide in here a little bit later that actually goes through all of our IT platforms and how complex an environment that is. And if it's complex to navigate, that actually is the antithesis of what we're trying to do, simplification. Going back, you all have seen these slides before. I mean, this is nothing new in terms of our demographics across the country. 30% of the U.S. population is classified as a baby boomer. 20% is the greatest generation or the greater generation. And we've got 31% of the millennials, 1981 current. And this is my generation here, the Generation Xers, 19%. However, that 19% is a lot of spending power. And this is a cohort that actually looks at and will be looking at technology. And we use technology, I think, not to the fullest. We have the spending power in terms of where technology can go. Engaging patients and caregivers is just a generational impact. That same cohort, you look at what are we looking for? You look at millennials on one spectrum, it's desiring quickness, prefer choices, use many providers. You look at where the baby boomers are and the greatest generation don't use so many providers. They like to stick to one provider. You look in terms of value and cost, everyone is high on the value and cost analysis. Everybody is looking at greater value for lower cost. If you look at the trust factor, look at the difference in terms of millennials and the Generation Xers and the other two cohorts. Trust is high on one spectrum where it isn't on the other. So what can technology do in terms of bridging that gap? One thing that we don't talk about enough is really around literacy. This is something that we at Eskenazi Health take very, very seriously in terms of taking healthcare information and how do we actually apply that for greater outcomes. Healthcare literacy, as this table kind of illustrates, look at the percentage distribution in terms of proficient versus below basic, 5th grade education or 4th grade education in terms of communication. So targeting a message to all actually is a shotgun effect and may not reach your targeted audience. So how do you personalize literacy, or how do you personalize your message by recognizing the fact that your audience may or may not be proficient or could just be functioning at a basic level? This is one thing that we at Eskenazi Health really focus in on in terms of a lot of wraparound services, in terms of how we actually look at the whole being of a patient and where we know and recognize gaps in terms of So at the end of the day, what is it that consumers really are looking for? They're looking for connected, for convenience. They're looking at a products in an economy that basically looks at the value proposition, convenience, going back to the examples that we had about Airbnb, about Uber. It's all about convenience now. And we're seeing that in terms of how consumers are, with the expansion of HIP 2.0 for us, really leveraging the ability to move to another payer, to another provider. And if we don't have a convenient location, we can't reduce our wait times, we can't get people in for appointments. They're voting with their feet. They're leaving our health system. I think many of you have probably seen lists like this come out before. You know, the top 10 healthcare IT trends for 2016. The two things that I kind of want to focus in on here, what's the environment for health information exchanges, and what's the environment for population health management? I think and you'll see this in the next couple of months, have an environment that I cannot emphasize enough that we need to leverage. We have one of the most storied and respected health information exchanges in the country. that we aren't leveraging to the fullest. We have a environment here in terms of data exchange that we aren't leveraging to the fullest. We have an environment here of venture capital, tech startups, tech companies that we aren't leveraging to the fullest. I think the environment is right to where we can do that. In terms of population health management, I'm going to go through just a quick, go back to this just a little bit.